Why can't you do that with baseball? Truly, we have Budweiser Terrace. We have these all. So why couldn't they go about having this in that area? It's the seats that are the hardest to sell. The reason they built the Budweiser Terrace is because people didn't want to sit there. And so it would just be empty half the time. So what can we do with this area? We've got it. Let's provide an area that will be used, and it allows for fans to have some kind of a different situation than what they would have elsewhere.
Welcome into the Viva Albertos podcast. As always, I am your host, Jake Wood, and I am joined this week by fellow writer Gabe Simons. Gabe, good to talk to you again. This week, we are joined by 101 ESPN on-air personality and co-host of BK and Ferrario and the Redbird Report. Welcome to the show, Brandon Kiley. BK, welcome back to the show. Glad you could squeeze us in around interviewing baseball's most viral fans in baseball.
Happy to do it, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Let's start off with this. Let's just jump right into it. You know, the Cardinals managed a 6-4 record over their last 10 games, including a split with San Diego and series wins over Sacramento and Kansas City. What has impressed you the most over this recent stretch of games, BK?
Just their ability to win in multiple ways. I mean, they're doing it in every way possible right now. They're pitching at times, they're hitting for power. They've got the opportunities with runners in scoring position, and even when they're not coming throughout most of the game, it feels like if they get into a big spot late in a game, I assume they're going to come through. Does it always happen that way? No, of course not, because baseball is a thing where you fail more often than you come through, but I feel as though they're going to, and they've earned that based upon their performance. More than just that, right? Like, eventually there will come a point in time where we break things down in a game like today. We're recording this on Sunday night, where they lose 2-0. We are going to talk about it, and we're going to say, here are all the things that they did wrong that led to that loss, and that will be the bigger story than what the two games were prior, where they did all of these things to find a way to come out on top. But we're not there right now. This was supposed to be a rebuilding season. It's a youth movement. And man, the style of play, the conviction that they have within that style of play, and the fact that they're able to execute on it so often, it's wildly impressive to watch. And I'm just having a blast watching them each and every night that they're on.
I have to ask about Tarps off now, because it seemed like you had basically a front row seat to the entire thing happening. Like, from my experience, I watched the first 9 innings on TV, didn't really notice the crowd like normal. Then I got in the car, and on the radio, all I could hear was the fans. I was like, what the hell is happening? Where did these guys come from? So what was your experience like? Like I said, I think you got a front row seat to that.
Yeah, so I went to the game on Friday night with my wife and my son, and we typically sit up in the Budweiser Terrace. I've talked about this on the radio before. I love sitting up there with my little guy because he can walk around, right? He has room to be able to. We typically get some kind of a baseball bat and a ball while we're there, and he's able to walk around with that, hit it on the ground, hit it back and forth. Like, it allows for him to have that opportunity. And when we're up there, typically he's locked in on the game. Well, something happened on Friday night where you started hearing this raucous element to the crowd over to our left. And I was like, what is going on? And you look down, and it's just a bunch of grown-ass men with their shirts off. And at first I'm like, oh, this is kind of strange. Like, what's happening down there? But then as it continued along, like, they just continued to be super into the game in a way that was almost infectious. Like, it wasn't forced. It was just really fun. And they got louder and louder, and there were more and more people that started to get over there. Now, I will say I was in the Budweiser Terrace, so I couldn't see what was happening right below me. I could only see, like, the 2 sections to my left. I didn't recognize until the very end that it was completely full for, like, 4 or 5 sections beneath me. It was unbelievable, man. It was such a cool environment. I will give credit to the Cardinals, by the way, because this is a stadium where it has not always felt as though the first priority is the fan environment. A lot of the time it's you come to Busch Stadium because you're watching the baseball on the field. And I get that. I respect that. I think that's great. It's 2026, and there's a whole hell of a lot of other things that need to happen while you're at the ballpark, though. And on Friday night, it was as though everybody was in sync. They started playing music that they wanted to hear over in the right field area. They played Mr. Brightside just because, like, earlier they were doing some of that, and then they played it in between innings. Like, it was just great. They played to the crowd. It was unbelievably fun. So after the game, as we're walking down, you guys know how this is. You're walking down over the ramp, and we get to the bottom, and I see some guys that had their shirts off. And so I tell Kara, said, listen, I think I've got to go talk to these guys. Like, I know I'm not covering the game tonight. I'm really sorry. I'm not working right now technically, but it's kind of my job to make sure that if something like this happens and it becomes a thing, I need to get as much information about it as possible. So I go talk to these guys, and I immediately just say, like, hey, listen, can you tell me about how this all came together? And this is before I went on the phone with them or anything. And they were like, yeah, you know, we're these baseball players. We went up there. We did this whole thing. Everybody knows the story by now. I didn't know when I walked up that these were the guys that started it all. I just wanted to get the perspective of somebody that was in the section instead of me being up high. Like, hey, when did this all come together? How did it happen? Was it organic? Was this something that was planned? So that was all I was trying to get. And then I realized after talking to them for a couple of minutes, like, oh, these are the guys that kind of got this all started. So I asked them, I said, hey, would you guys be willing to do a quick interview with me? They were unbelievable. And the whole weekend has just been honestly as much fun as I can remember at Busch Stadium since 22. Where that season, I feel like it gets forgotten by some fans. It was special. That second half in general, that's as much fun as I've had going to baseball games in a really long time. But this kind of felt like that. Not the same crowd, not the same numbers in attendance, but the same energy that was in the ballpark. And it's something that's been severely lacking over the last couple of seasons.
100%. It felt very reminiscent of like what you would see at like a St. Louis City SC game, right? That kind of crowd involvement into the game. A lot of people have talked about, hey, this is like a college football environment. This is what you would get a lot of times in that situation too. And I think that for a lot of younger fans' criticisms, this has been like right up there at the top with the environment and being able to be sort of yourself and being loud and brash and embracing it and having fun. And I think it is good for the game to be able to show a younger fan, like the younger fans, a younger audience that, hey, you know, you can come and just have fun and be yourself and create this environment too that is fun and enjoyable for everyone to experience. It doesn't, like, there's obviously plenty of area in the ballpark if you want to sit there with, you know, your significant other with your scorecard and take in baseball in its, you know, traditional classic form, then that's totally okay. There's plenty of space in the ballpark. I don't know, 46,000 seat stadium for you to be able to go and have your experience while these kids are also off, you know, being Budweiser Terrace bros and having the time of their lives with their shirts off and like absolutely getting after it. You know, the team even talked about it in postgame, like, you know, they willed them on to those wins the first two nights of the series. And I feel like you have such a unique perspective on this, not only because you were there, but also being a Kansas City sleeper cell plant here in St. Louis. Like, you were going to be happy with the result no matter what.
Not true. I am about my professional life over anything.
Yeah, good answer.
A random game in the middle of May for the Royals doesn't mean a whole lot right now. A random game in the middle of May for me professionally being on the radio means a whole lot. So I would have much preferred, I will say this, and I don't mind doing so. My friends in Kansas City will get after me. I don't care. I wanted the Cardinals to win that game on Friday night because it's a better story for me professionally, and ultimately that's what I care about most. I will just to respond to the crowd, the atmosphere. I do wonder if that's something that baseball can start to implement more of. Like, could you mentioned soccer. There is a supporter section at soccer games, right? Where, like, you know when you get those tickets what you're signing up for. You're going to be standing the entire time. There will be flags. There will be people chanting. Like, this is what you're going there for. And for some people, it's the last thing that they want. They just want to sit down the sidelines, and they'd like to be seated the entire game and stand and clap if there's a goal. And that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with consuming soccer that way. For other people, they want to go in, they want to get slosh drunk, and they want to go to the supporter section and scream their heads off for the entire game.
Hell yeah,
which
brother!
Is also fine, so long as you're getting an Uber home and you're being safe while doing it. Why can't you do that with baseball? Truly, we have Budweiser Terrace. We have these all-inclusive sections. You've got the Coca-Cola section that they opened up this year. Like, you've got a lot of different areas that allow for different kinds of fans to enjoy themselves. You've got club seats. You've got the nosebleeds. Like, there are a lot of different vibes around a ballpark depending on where you decide to sit. So why couldn't they go about having this in that area? It's the seats that are the hardest to sell. Like, you go up there, the reason they built the Budweiser Terrace is because people didn't want to sit there. And so it would just be empty half the time. So what can we do with this area? We've got it. Let's provide an area that will be used, and it allows for fans to have some kind of a different situation than what they would have elsewhere. Well, this could also be that, where you have, if you're going down the right field line, you want to sit in these 5 sections. You know what you're signing up for. It's going to be a lot of standing, a lot of chanting, a lot of rowdiness. I think it'd be great. I don't know if it's something baseball would really accept, and it has to be something that starts organically, but they might have fallen into something over the weekend that they can really start to lean into.
Well, and there's some national interest in it too, though, because like the John Boy Media guy came up and interviewed somebody in that section. So I do think baseball is ready to embrace having something like that, and I wonder if the Cardinals, those fans in particular, will just inspire other fans to do it in their other stadiums. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that'd be kind of cool if it did.
I think it'd be great. I mean, I don't know how you guys are when you go to baseball games, but like, if I'm going with my son, I want one kind of an atmosphere, right? I want one kind of an experience when I'm going with him. And it's a very different experience if I'm going with 4 or 5 of my buddies. I would be far more likely to go into that supporter section, right? So if that's available, I think that would be great. I think there are a lot of guys or girls that live in St. Louis in their early to mid-20s that want to meet some people, and a lot of the time you're not doing that at the bars anymore. So guess what? Club Busch. Every Friday night, come on down, meet your single people, right? Like, come and enjoy the game, and while you're here, you're gonna be rowdy, and then you leave, you go home, get your Uber. I think there's something here. I think it's something that could become more common, both in St. Louis, and I agree with you, Gabe, like maybe elsewhere as well. It's just a matter of really embracing it and incorporating that into the core of what you want your park to be. I think a lot of this is what San Diego did, man.
100%.
San Diego allowed for their ballpark, especially on weekends, to be a bit of a party. And now it has become an atmosphere that people that live there want to go and be a part of. So hopefully there's something more there for St. Louis as well.
Well, as far as taking my shirt off and waving it around in the air could possibly be to talk about, I think that there are some fans who probably want to hear us talk about the team, so let's dig into some numbers and stuff like that. BK, you're commonly referred to on the radio as kind of a stats nerd, right? And so, but you're amongst your people here on Viva Albertos. We love numbers, we love stats, we love talking about it. And we're going to talk about the starting rotation starting off. The starting rotation has managed to do a full 180 so far this season. In their first 14 games of the season, I'll pull this number up real quick. In the first 14 games of the season, they had a 4.87 ERA as a collective in the rotation, which was 25th in baseball. They were 28th in FIP at 5.01. And I think that Dusty Blake and the rotation as a whole deserve a ton of credit for the work that they've put in. Since Jackie Robinson Day on April 15th, in 28 games, the Cardinals rotation has posted a 3.44 ERA, which is good for the 6th best in baseball. Their 4.17 FIP puts them at 13th in the league, so not exactly a fluke propped up by extreme luck. Their 287 BABIP over that time also ranks 14th in the league and can sometimes indicate some extreme luck, and neither underlying indicator suggests that the surface level results aren't legitimate. So when we're talking about, the starting rotation, how important has it been for the rotation to do or continue to do what it's doing in order to sustain this, Cinderella's carriage from becoming that quote-unquote pumpkin at whenever the clock strikes midnight?
I think it's the thing we're all kind of waiting to happen, right? Like, if we're being honest, the thing that a lot of people are wondering, can this actually hold up? It's the rotation. Because you look over to the offense, I'm sure we'll get into this later, there aren't a ton of guys that are wildly outproducing what you think they'll be all season long. Now, one of those guys is Jordan Walker. We can talk about it. But for the most part, the offense is just kind of in line with what you thought they could potentially do. The rotation is quite different. Kyle Leahy's now below a 4 ERA on the season. Michael McGreevy is a 2 ERA on the season. But then, like, Libby at a 4.4, I don't think that's crazy. Palante at a 4.0, I know people will laugh at this. I don't think that's crazy. I think Andre Palante is fine. I think Andre Palante, if he is your number 4 or 5 starter, you're doing A-okay for yourself. If he's a 1, 2, or a 3, you've got significant issues, but as a 4 or a 5, you're okay. And Dustin May, I know what the numbers say, but since his first couple of starts, that guy has been rock solid. For the St. Louis Cardinals, you could not ask for anything more out of him. I think so much of this comes down to McGreevy. Because if that guy can be not a 2 ERA, this is unsustainable. He's getting pretty fortunate with a lot of the batted ball luck. That's the one guy that I can't say anything else. It's fortunate right now. But if you consistently get quality starts out of him, 6 innings, 3 or fewer earned runs, you're feeling really good about that. And that'll give you a chance in each of those games. And right now, it's huge. You asked what kind of an influence is this having in their success. It's everything. Because this is not a super deep bullpen right now. I think you're starting to add more pieces to it that you trust to some degree. But you really have like 3 or 4 guys coming out of the pen that you trust on any given night. And that means your starter better get you through 6 pretty regularly to be able to turn things over to those 3 guys to lock it down the way that you want to. As long as they can continue to do that, I feel pretty good about where they're at from a pitching perspective.
To carry on your thought there about how we're not deep in the bullpen, do you think that maybe we should try a different option than Matt Swanson and Justin Brule and just to try somebody else? Because I feel like with Swanson, like he'll have some good outings, but it just feels like then he'll allow a home run, or today he walked the guy and didn't strike anybody out. And I personally don't get the Brule thing at all. I feel like we definitely should move on. He cannot find the strike zone. Do you think we should cycle through somebody else maybe?
I'm open to it. I just need to hear the option. Like, who is the player that they go to that is definitely an upgrade from what they have in their bullpen right now? That's where I struggle.
Fair. I would say definitely an upgrade is... I think Ryan Fernandez has earned a chance. I do. He's playing well in AAA, and he played well in his 5 and 2/3
Showed well
innings.
in his small performance, yep.
Sure.
Yes. He's playing really well in AAA, actually. He has a 2.84 ERA, 3.21 FIP, striking out 26% of guys, walking 6%. And
if they
obviously
made that move tomorrow, I have zero qualms with it. I'd have no issues with it whatsoever. I do think it is rather telling that they have not made that move.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I just think, I don't know why they have such an aversion to sending Matt Swanson down to work on whatever's ailing him.
It's the same thing that they did last year with Ryan Fernandez. You know?
No,
like,
I don't get it.
It's just the reverse of what they did. I don't know. I am somebody that is of the belief that I think it's really hard to develop a bullpen arm at the major league level. I understand you want to see how major leaguers are going to react to their stuff. I get that completely. But if you're coming in and you're getting your brains beaten in every time that you're pitching, I don't know how much that's ultimately helping you to be able to get things back on track, because confidence is a real thing. Now, I do think, though, that Swanson has been a little better lately, so maybe they're seeing signs that this is getting turned around, and if it is, well, yeah, I do think the upside there might be a little better than that of Ryan Fernandez. I would say for right now, I'm okay with where they're at in the pen, because if Swanson's really the one guy that you're looking at saying, I'm not sure. I agree with you on Brule. I've been advocating to change that spot in the bullpen as well, but I don't know, man. They seem to disagree with us.
Now, you were on the keep Justin Brule train. Let's not do revisionist history here, BK. You were advocating for keeping Brule, and For the record, I am in that camp as well. If you go over to Baseball Savant, you look at some of the specs on his pitches, you look at the movement profiles, like there is clay there to be molded. He's added a changeup this season, which has positive specs on it as well. There is a ball of clay there to be molded into a big league reliever. I don't think that... I realize that maybe Justin Brule isn't the hill I want to die on necessarily, but at the same time, I think that there's a reason why they're continuing on with him. Like there is elements to his game, to his pitch profile. It's all about honing it in, right? It's all about execution with Justin Brule. I think there is plenty enough in the stuff to get major league hitters out. I think, to the point about Matt Swanson real quick, I think it's similar to kind of how Ollie Marmol was describing Jordan Walker a little bit. He has to do it at the big league level. You're not going to learn anything from him going down to AAA and dominating lesser competition. He has to do it at the big league level for, to get himself back on track. And I think that, to your point, he has been a little bit better lately. And so perhaps we're seeing him turn that corner and is getting himself back to kind of what he was in 2025. And if that's the case, then that gives, Cardinals fans a little bit less heartburn at the end of games whenever they see Matt Swanson trotting in from the bullpen and say, okay, the guy that we thought maybe had the outside chance at being a closer for the Cardinals this year is coming in. Not, holy crap, it's Chris Roycroft 2.0, and I need my Tums so badly right now. And so I think that it's kind of working itself out. But T-Bone on your show constantly is an advocate for churning through the bullpen, finding different options, and I just think that the Cardinals are really invested in what they have out there currently, and I think that it's going to be a little while before we see any type of churn outside of like a Roy Croft type fall off where the guy just has no confidence and can't get it done no matter what.
To be clear, I advocated for Brule to be here over Luis Peralta, who is objectively a bad major league pitcher. I am not advocating that he needs to be here, just given the alternative. You're going to have to give me somebody better than that. And that's the thing, man. Like, part of why I don't think you're seeing that churn is because they just don't have the same kind of flexibility in the bullpen as they've had in previous years. The only guys right now with options out of your bullpen where you would not potentially have to put them through waivers in order for you to be able to stash them in AAA are Gordon Graceffo, who's not getting sent down. He's been pretty good for you. And Matt Swanson. So it's really just the Swanson conversation that we're having here. And that would mean I just need a good alternative to him. If you think that person, like if the Cardinals announce tomorrow, they're calling up Fernandez, they're sending down Swanson, I won't have a strong case against it. I'd be fine with it. I'm also not going to be the person, though, that gives you the strong case as to why you need to make that move right now. I would have probably had a stronger case for that earlier in the season when Swanson was struggling the way that he was.
So I think we've talked a lot about the rotation, and I do want to go throw one thing back to you. You talked about Dustin May. I believe it's 7 of his last 8 starts, he has a quality start. So, you're seeing this long line of success he's had, and the only reason it's not 8 out of 8 starts, I believe, is because he just went 5 1/3 and still gave up 3 runs in that start. I can't remember who it was against. It's not really that important, but he was short of 8 straight quality starts by just not making it out of the 6th inning. I want to transition a little bit to the offense, right? The Cardinals' offense, at least in the month of May, appears to be experiencing a bit of a power outage. Other than Jordan Walker and Alec Burleson, no offensive player has an isolated power above league average, which is 140 this season. How concerned are you about the continued lack of slug out of, I referenced to Gabe earlier, Nolan Gorman. You might have a strong case against the other 3 names that I bring up with Ivan Herrera, Nathan Church, and JJ Weatherholt. I realize their overall season numbers are a lot stronger, but when you look at just what they're doing in the month of May, the last 2-ish weeks of stretch, which I look at games in probably 15-ish game sample sizes to kind of establish a little bit of a trend. When you look at the last 15 or so games since the start of the month of May, Herrera, Church, Weatherholt, the power has dropped off. There's not as much impact in the baseball. I'm not concerned about Weatherholt or Herrera, but I am concerned that there's not more power coming out of those profiles lately, if I can make that as clear as possible.
So for me, the Weatherholt power was surprising to begin with. I didn't think he was going to provide that much power early in the season, which led to a lot of the conversations of, okay, then where's the power coming from for this team? I mean, we have Derek Gould on the show weekly, and I remember early on, we were like, how is this team scoring runs? Like, how is it going to come together offensively? Because you looked at the lineup and it was a whole lot of ifs or maybes. And then Weatherholt got off to this unbelievable start. And I was like, okay, well, if that's real, that changes the trajectory of everything. And then Walker followed that with whatever this is for him. And so now you had the 1, 2, 3, 4 of those guys, and you felt good about every single one of them. So what is my level of concern right now? It's not overly high, because I didn't expect this to be a team that won with slugging anyways. I think Herrera's going to be fine. I think that's a guy that's going to hit like 25 home runs for you. I think he's more of a pure hitter than he is a pure slugger. Burleson's going to add some of that. Walker is still hitting for ridiculous power right now. It's really like, if you're going to have a fall from grace from Weatherholt when it comes to his power, you need somebody else to emerge to replace some of that. That can be Church for 2 weeks. That can be Gorman for 2 weeks. Pages goes through these stretches where it's like 3 home runs in 7 games or whatever, right? I'm not saying he's a great hitter, but he has his moments where he hits for a little bit of power. I don't think that's a problem for them so much as it is just like something to keep an eye on. And it means that you've got to do all of the other things that much better. Early in the season, they were doing all of the little things without a whole lot of power. That helps, but it doesn't mean you're going to win a ton of games. If you're doing all of those little things and you get a little bit of power, that's when you start to see the success that we've seen from the 2026 Cardinals, especially lately. So, to put a finer point on it, not all that concerned about it. It just means that you've got to be good at these other things. That rotation has to keep pitching the way that it has. You need to keep coming through with these runners in scoring position situations. You've got to play elite level defense. You need to be a threat to steal a base at any given time. Like, that stuff becomes that much more valuable when you don't have the power to lean on.
And when I was referencing Weatherholt, Gabe and I talked about this too whenever we did our first run through of this episode, that with Weatherholt's power, it was more about the doubles, right? I feel like there is way more doubles in his game that he's not getting to right now. And when you look at the hit profile, he's pulling everything right now. And, one of the things we knew about Weatherholt when he was ascending was this guy is an all fields hitter. He can spray the ball all over the yard. He can, utilize every gap in the outfield and leverage that to his advantage. And he's not doing that right now. He is so pull heavy in his game that I want to see more of that all fields approach and just being that nightmare at the top of the order. And you could see the at bats are still great across the board. And I am in a Discord server with some other Cardinals fans, and I kind of put in there Weatherholt's last 2 week stretch, and you could see the offensive dip, and I was like, he's kind of going through a little bit of a downshift right now, but he's still managing a 340 on base percentage even now while he's in that downshift. I'm like, and the common consensus was that's a hell of a floor for a player if you're struggling and you're still producing a 340 on base. And yes, that is the primary aspect of Weatherholt's power. But also remember, whenever Weatherholt, jumped up to AAA, the power jumped up too. And so that's continuing here in the major leagues, because whenever we asked him about it at winter warm-up, he said he thought it was because the baseball's harder, right? And so whenever you impact that harder baseball, it goes further. So I had no reason to think that the power that he was, maybe to the degree that he was doing it this season, was probably unsustainable and unrealistic, but the increased power from even what he showed in the first half of last season, I wasn't surprised by at all, just for the sake of throwing that out there.
Yeah, that's fair. I was a little surprised by it just because I didn't know that he would translate this well this quickly. I just think the pitching from AAA to the majors is such a huge jump nowadays. Yep. And to be able to have that kind of success against it speaks to his natural talent. It also speaks to his preparation and all of those different things. I wouldn't be overly concerned about the dry spell that we've seen lately. I will say this, this is when you learn a lot about a hitter, because my guess is and I haven't looked enough into it to know exactly what it is that they're exploiting just yet, but my guess is they've found something, and they're going to keep attacking there.
Fastball's up.
And he will eventually make the adjustment. And when he makes that adjustment, they will need to do something different. We've seen this with Walker for years, right? It's that slider low and away, where if he can just avoid swinging at it, forget anything else, just lay off of that pitch, everything else becomes that much easier. For Burleson, we saw this with him, where he was just overly aggressive with everything, including pitches that he could not do damage against. And once he stopped being overly aggressive and brought pitchers into the zone against him, well, now he's doing damage against stuff. He can hit anything, but that doesn't mean you have to hit everything. So we'll see what that's going to be for J.J. Weatherholt. Maybe as he continues to adjust within the next week or two, you'll see something, and that's when it'll start to click for him again. So I would wait for that. I think it's coming.
Somewhere where they could hypothetically add power is they got a few players in the minor leagues who have future potential power. We don't know if it'll come immediately. Where do you stand on when the Cardinals should maybe promote like Jimmy Crooks, Joshua Baez, and Blaze Jordan? Those three specifically. Do you think should come soon or not at all this year?
Let's start with Blaze Jordan. I think he's the most interesting discussion today. I would be in favor of calling him up. Like, just go ahead and make the move. I was surprised that they did not make this move. Not surprised. I advocated for them to make the move on Friday, before this weekend series where you knew we're going to see a lefty starter on Saturday, and it also set up to potentially get some guys a day off this weekend as well. And in those scenarios, I thought it would have made a lot of sense to have him as an option for you to be able to start against the lefty starter, and then maybe to fill in for other guys as well. They decided not to do that. Thomas Ajayci got the opportunity, and credit to him, he also came through in those opportunities this weekend. That being said, I don't know how much I trust that to continue moving forward. So I would be totally fine with them making the switch of Sajasi going down and bringing up Blaze Jordan right now. How does he get the playing time? Well, I think there's a couple of ways that you can do that. I think he can get some time at third if they trust him defensively over there. I also think on the days where Ivan Herrera is behind the plate, the DH spot could be an opportunity for him. And then maybe, like what you saw this weekend, lefty starter on the mound, maybe that's a day that Burleson gets a day off of his feet. So I think there's a scenario where you could get him the playing time, and he would be the one that I would advocate for the soonest. Crooks is interesting, man. I mean, the bat is clearly playing. The strikeouts are dropping down at the minor league level as well, which is a good thing. That was the biggest question that I had early on about his success. Yeah, sure, he's hitting home runs, but he's also striking out like 35% of the time. How's that going to translate to the major league level? Probably not well. Well, it's been better lately, so he's interesting to me. I don't know how they get him the playing time, though. It's a lefty bat. I don't know how you get him significant opportunities. I know people will just say, well, obviously, you send Paez down, you bring him up. They're not going to do that. You can hate it. That's fine. They trust Pedro Paez behind the plate. They think that he has value for them. So that one I find difficult. I don't know what the plan's going to be there.
You're talking to two members of the acclaimed Pedro Paez family. So we've been told. We have strongly we have advocated for in favor of keeping Paez in his current role. You see the value. Obviously now leading major leagues and stolen runners caught stealing. That's the word I'm looking for. Leading the league in caught stealing. Like he's throwing out guys like, who was it? He threw out Bobby Witt. Was it yesterday? He's thrown out Ellie De La Cruz. Like, he's throwing out, like, not just, like, Joe Schmo guys that are running. He's, like, throwing out the best base stealers in baseball. And it's not particularly close. When you look at, like, average arm strength from the catcher position, man, Ivan Herrera's got, like, 71 miles an hour from catcher to second base. When Paez is, like, 82 miles an hour. That's a world of a difference of an arm just behind the plate. And you also talk about, like, things that can't be quantified from a catcher, like his ability to call a game, his ability to go off script. These are all things we lauded Yadier Molina in doing, and if Pedro Paez is like showing you that he is capable of doing those similar things, we had Gordon Graceffo on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about, like, he called him a field general. Those were his words. He said, that's a field general on the field behind the plate. It's an extra coach out on the field. That's how we feel when we have Pedro Paez behind the plate. And so, like, there is an inherent trust factor to the catcher they have back there whenever Pedro Paez is back there. And not that they were disparaging of, because, like, obviously with Graceffo, he's thrown to Crooks, he's thrown to Paez, he's thrown to Herrera. He knows all of these guys, and so what more of a uniquely interesting perspective than to get his specifically? And, that he advocates in favor of Pedro Paez back there says all you need to know. But, to kind of tie this all together, I think you're correct. I don't know how Jimmy Crooks gets the playing time necessary to make like his bat really like play, because I think that he's going to be somebody who it is a large sample size where you start to see the effect. I don't know that he necessarily has the ability to kind of snap in and you know, punch and then be pulled back out and then jump back in and punch, you know, that style of player. And so I start to wonder, is Jimmy Crooks getting squeezed where he is right now? Because you know, Rainiel Rodriguez was, you know, elevated to AA last week. You know, he's got Leo Burnell already there time sharing with him. You have Pages and Herrera in front of him, so the two sides are coming together and pushing him out. My thinking is, why not try to use Crooks in a prospect for prospect type swap? You know, they're fairly rare in baseball, but we do see them ever so often. A couple weeks ago I wrote about how maybe you could look at, like, when we saw back in, I think, 2021, when Zach Gallen was traded for Jazz Chisholm, that type of thing, where it was, you know, excess for excess and both needs matched up, and ultimately it was a win-win. Can you find somewhere in baseball where there is a third base prospect near Major League ready who might be being blocked, and you could look to swap Jimmy Crooks for that? So I wonder if maybe you know, that is an avenue the Cardinals could explore to improve themselves this season and for the next few seasons, because obviously you'd have 6 years of control, and that would fit into, you know, kind of what I want to talk about a little bit later, and like Heim doubling down on, like, we're going to continue to make moves that are, you know, long-term focused, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they can't attack or, you know, require in return players that are young and controllable that can help the Major League roster this season as well.
I also think it's worth noting, guy's 24 years old. He's having success down at AAA. It's not as though he's dying on the vine. It's okay sometimes for a guy to be blocked for a year or two. Now, if this continues next year and in 2028 as well, like, yeah, you got a problem on your hands, because eventually you've got to get some kind of a return on your investment. But I don't think we're there just yet. I think we've got, like, if people are going to get so mad at me when I say this, but if Jimmy Crooks does not play this year at the Major League level and also does not get traded this year, that's okay. It's okay for him next year to come in at the age of 25 and then to battle for opportunities at the Major League level as well. Having catching depth is a good thing. It's a very good thing. And very few teams across the league have it. Rainiel Rodriguez is coming. I have no idea if he's going to be a catcher when he gets here. No clue. I don't know how he's going to adjust to the kind of preparation that is necessary at the AAA level, much less at the Major League level. I don't know how much they're going to want him catching behind the plate if he is as good of a hitter as he appears to be right now. So I would just hold on to the asset and see where you end up at the end of the year. See what you think about Pedro Pages as the guy that is splitting time with Ivan Herrera. And if you decide, hey, you know what, Pedro Pages in the offseason is the guy that we're going to go ahead and trade, that's fine too. But I don't think that there's the same sense of urgency with the organization that fans have about this situation right now, because if we're being real, this is a good problem for the Cardinals to have, and it's the kind of problem that they have at very few positions right now, and that's why it sticks out so much for all of us, because you're seeing a guy that's succeeding at an age that would typically desire some kind of a call up to the big league level, and it's not happening. This is what happens for the Dodgers. This is what happens for the Astros. This is what happens for some of the best teams across the league. And this is the hope, is the Cardinals can get back to some of that as they continue along here. If Crooks was a righty, by the way, I could find playing time for him a lot.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But as a lefty bat, it's really hard. His position plus his handedness makes it difficult to find that opportunity. And that brings us to the outfield situation of it all, which is, hey man, if you didn't have Lars Nootbaar coming back, Joshua Baez might be getting close. But because Newt is on his way, I don't think that there is an obvious spot within the next couple of months for a guy like Baez.
And I would point out that Ivan Herrera spent like 3 seasons in AAA. Carson Kelly spent like 3 seasons in AAA. It's just like kind of what you do with catcher. You kind of overcook them a little bit, and you keep them in the minors because they have other things to work on than what you see on the stat page. Because catcher is such a difficult position. You have to know a lot more than I think every other position. And yeah, you got to be a field manager basically. But Jake, by the way, I want to mention people are going to get so mad that you compared Pedro Paz to Yachty.
That's
You
fine.
even brought up Yachty. I'm just letting
Well,
you know.
I was going to say,
You're
like,
a little bit.
when you talked about Carson Kelly and Ivan Herrera spending 3+ seasons, I was also going to bring up invoke Yachty's name and be like, well, there was a bit of a brick wall at the major league level that was kind of keeping them from ascending there. But your point is still well made that, like, it takes a little bit extra time for catchers to fully develop. So, like, I was just going to add an extra additional note to it, not necessarily, like, in lieu of your point. But I guess I also want to make sure that, like, I say, put this out on the back end too of like what you were saying, BK. Like, I'm not advocating for or in favor of like having to trade Jimmy Crooks, but that is an option that exists. If you want to go out and hunt for like Chaim expressed, you know, we want to hunt and leverage, you know, on the margins, find those areas where we can exploit. If you can use a Jimmy Crooks to do that and make your 2026 team better now and also for the future, that would be something that fits into what he has talked about and also makes a ton of sense in terms of like future roster building. So let's move on. The Cardinals are going from one important stretch of games to the next. So goes the season for teams that have something to play for. Sorry, Rockies. These next 4 series against all 4 divisional opponents will likely have meaningful impact on whether this team can truly compete in this division unexpectedly in 2026. Your thoughts on that, BK?
Yeah, this is I mean, it feels like every stretch is important, and for different reasons, right? They just got through that stretch of what eventually became 16 games in 17 days, what was originally supposed to be the 17 and 17, and that was primarily against, like, high-level contenders. You had Seattle, you had the Dodgers, you had the Brewers, you had the Padres, and you get through that stretch, and you're like, okay, how do we stack up against legitimate contenders? The answer for that was quite good. Now you've got an opportunity to find out how do we stack up against our legitimate peers within this division. You've got Pittsburgh, Cincy, Milwaukee, Chicago. What is it going to look like when you get to the end of that? You get to June 1st, and you have seen yourself for really a 2-week stretch against exclusively divisional foes. It is wild to me that we still have not yet seen the Chicago Cubs against the St. Louis Cardinals. That's crazy. We're going to get to almost June without a single game between the two teams. Man, I don't know how you guys feel, but as I have watched, whether it's the games against the rest of the division so far or just seen these other teams play, I think the Cardinals have a legitimate case to be the second best team in this division. I think the Cubs are still the best. Injuries might have something to say about that eventually if they continue to happen for that team, but right now I just think they're a little better than what the Cardinals have to offer. But you look at Pittsburgh, you look at Milwaukee, you look at Cincy, I don't think they're significantly better than the current version of the St. Louis Cardinals, in my personal opinion.
Do you have this is an odd question, do you have a favorite for who will get last in the NL Central this year?
I think Cincy. I think that would be the team that I would currently pick for that position. It just is not going well for them this year, guys. They don't have a whole lot of anything to hang their hat on, so I'd probably go Cincinnati as my last place team currently.
I agree with you, but it's a weird thing to say about a team who's a game over 500.
Yeah, I mean the whole division's good right now. Like there's not a good choice for that, which is strange because coming into the season I thought there would be an obvious one, and I thought it would be the Cardinals. But the Reds last year were good because their pitching was excellent. They couldn't hit, but their pitching was really good, and now they aren't pitching very well. So it's a strange team.
Their meaningful additions in the offseason to the offense were a lot of the heavy lifting in some respects there as well. Death taxes and Reds pitchers getting injured every single year is something you can always count on. I think that like the rest of the division is going to be interesting. I would still put the Cardinals fourth at the end of the day. I still believe in that the highest floor of any team in this division right now, and obviously losing Cade Horton, and I think they just lost Edward Cabrera too. So like, you know, they're starting to like suffer their own pitching injuries. I think Palencia, their closer, just got back from the injured list too. Phil Maton has not been nearly as good with Chicago as he was with St. Louis, and so like there are a lot of like holes starting to creep up in that pitching rotation, and they're already talking, like I've seen, what was it, like Bob Nightingale talk about like they're already reaching out to Milwaukee about possibly getting Freddie Peralta. Like they're already talking about having to potentially make this giant move at the deadline. And so yeah, there are questions existing with their pitching staff, but until I see them go through like a significant drop-off, because they've already had 2 10-game winning streaks this season, it's pretty hard not to say that they don't have staying power at the top of the division too. So I don't know. I don't like with this division. This division's on drugs. It's drunk. It needs to go home. I don't know what the hell's going on right now.
Cardinals have a chance to change that, though. Facing the Pirates, and if we do well in this series, they will go under 500. Or at least, we have to sweep them.
All 3 of the teams can go under 500 in this stretch, and that could be courtesy of the Cardinals, and they could really separate themselves. But do I think that's entirely likely? I would bet against it at this point. Like, that's the anti-homer in me. The homer in me and says, hell yeah, they're going 14-0, and none of these bastards are going to win a game. But to be realistic and be honest, I'm hoping for like what 8-6 out of this stretch, and like that keeps you in the game, that keeps you like still showing positively. And I don't think 8-6 out of this next 14 or whatever it is against the interdivision squad. That's like they've proven that's not unrealistic going forward, and so that's kind of maybe where I set my fair expectations for. Obviously, I'd be fine with 7-7. I would accept 6-8, but if they were able to go 8-6 over this next stretch, like I'd be happy with it. BK, I wanted to talk to you because your friend Derek Gould, who joins the show every Tuesday at the worst time slot in baseball, because that's ironically the same time that Ollie Marmol is on KMOX with the Gas House Gang every week. And so whoever scheduled that, if that was Derek's request, well, that's tough. But at the same time, that was a tough time slot for him. But Derek Gould spoke with Chaim Bloom on Thursday after Thursday's win in Sacramento, and Bloom doubled down on the long-term process the team is committed to despite this unexpected early season success. How I see things, unless the team is in first place by a wide margin at the deadline in the NL Central, then I think the Cardinals will still sell off its pieces. If the Cardinals are still in a spot where contending and pushing for a playoff spot is realistically on the table, they might also entertain some small marginal additions to support the young core pushing forward. At the beginning of the season, it appeared to be kind of an improbable accomplishment, but safe to say they've made believers out of the fan base, and those across the league as well have taken note of what the Cardinals are doing this year.
Scheduling thing. Mondays are typically some kind of a travel day for the beat writer. Thursday are typically the early games. Fridays are no good going into the weekend, so it's a scheduling thing. That's why we do Tuesdays. And then the 12 o'clock hour is our highest rated hour, so that's why we have Derek Gould in the 12 o'clock hour typically to answer that question specifically. As for the trade deadline situation, I'm fascinated. I don't know what they will do. I don't know even what they should do. I know that's a bad opinion to have as a radio host, but I'm open to all scenarios at this point. I think if you get absolutely blown away by some kind of a return for Riley O'Brien, I completely understand why you would make that move. He's a really good reliever. He's also 31 years old. He has no history of sustained success at the major league level because of injuries and ineffectiveness, and he has 4 years of club control. That is the kind of asset that you get a haul for potentially. And as a reliever, I have no idea if he's going to be good next year. So if you're Chaim Bloom and you say we're not winning the World Series this year, let's be real about it, and we are getting an opportunity for a blue chip prospect, a lottery ticket kind of a prospect, and one other guy that we'll throw in here, or maybe it's some kind of like a competitive balance pick, whatever it may be, right? Like, that is the kind of thing that would be really hard for you to say no to if you're in his shoes. I don't know what they do with Dustin May. I personally am open to the idea that he could be somebody that's back again next year. I know many people disagree with that notion, but he's 28 years old. He's not an old man. I think he can really help you. You do have a lack of pitching depth in your minor league system that's ready to go right now. So if he signs back on a 1-year, $20 million deal or like a 3-year, $50 million deal, A, that helps you, and B, that's a tradable contract down the road. So I'm open to that either way as well. I don't know, man. What do you guys think they will do? Forget what they should do here for a moment. What do you think, if you were in Chaim Bloom's head right now, what do you think his plan is as of today?
I think he's got the same, I know what he said, but I think he's got the same opinion as you, because I think right now he realizes I don't have to commit. I could just say we're sticking on schedule. There's no reason for us to commit to anything because we're not making any trades. We're not doing anything until July. So I'll just say we're sticking to plan. If the team falls apart, okay, now we know we can make the trades. And if you have to start making some tough decisions when it gets close, then you listen to offers and then see if you're like, oh God, I got to make this trade. This is too good not to make this trade. They're offering me 2 top 100 prospects for Riley O'Brien. How can I not make this trade? Yeah, like you said, our bullpen, especially, and to some extent our starting pitching, is not really playoff built at all. So, yeah, I think he has the same opinion as you, where he just is like, I hope they make this easier for me when the deadline comes around, because if they don't, I don't know what I'm going to do, because this is a really tough decision.
If I'm Chaim Bloom right now, I'm still taking I'll be open to taking calls on anything and everything. Like, everything has to be on the table. The season was intentionally set up to be, for the long term. And I think that, his quote was that, we're long-term focused right now. If we stray from that because of early success in the season, then shame on us. I think really gives you a good insight into, like, where he is mentally on this whole thing, like, in terms of clarity on the situation. I kind of gave my opinion a little bit in that intro to this topic. Is like, if they're in first place and by like a wide margin, if they're 6-7 games up on, damn it, I didn't even mean to do that. Oh, there's the dad in me. If they're like 7 or 8 games, there we go, I rectified it. 7 or 8 games up on the division, like the second place team in the division, then I can understand a potential hold or even like a small buy. Like, you didn't expect this season to go the way it is. It's house money. If you want to add some marginal pieces and just kind of hold your other short-term assets, I'll understand that. But short of having an actual, like, almost unbreakable foothold in a position for a playoff spot, I maybe it's a little bit aggressive for me to say, but I think it would be almost reckless to hold on to some of the short-term pieces they have or some of the high-value assets they have, because the Cardinals have talked about consistently, we want to get back to what we were. We want to be a team that for the next 10 years are out there regularly kicking people's asses. And like, whenever Ollie Marmol says that, like, you believe him. Whenever Chaim Bloom says that, I fully believe them, because he probably won't come out and say it because he's so nice, but I think he has a really bad taste in his mouth from what happened in Boston and how that whole thing went. And I think he's out to prove a lot of people wrong and fulfill his process and do it correctly. So I think that it would almost be, malpractice feels like aggressive, and everybody likes to throw those terms around, but I almost feel like if he weren't there to leverage Riley O'Brien with what has done over the last calendar year, more numbers. If you go back to June 5th of last season, whenever he was called up for good, look at what Riley O'Brien has done when you compare him to other right-handed relievers in the rest of the league. He's a top 10 right-handed reliever in baseball. And like you referenced, BK, those guys get a ton in return for. So for the Cardinals to kind of look over that because of 50 games early on in a season, whenever the June swoon has been real for this team, we don't know what's going to happen a month from now. We don't know. Like, if you look at the record of the last 2 seasons, whenever you had incomplete rosters, flawed rosters, the same way you have one this year, May always tends to be a really fun month, and then June comes around and it's the slap in the face with reality. And so, like, yeah, you have to leave it a little bit open-ended, but at the same time, I still think you are approaching the deadline as if you are ready to take the highest bidder's offer for your most valuable assets.
I have a counter to that, though, which is that you don't want to kill the fan base reaction. The fan base has embraced this team. If we're close at all to being a playoff team at the deadline, you don't want to take the risk and be like, okay, we're just going to completely kill fan interest if we start trading everybody who is off. Don't you think?
Sorry, and I don't think that it is necessarily just a straight sell, right? If you're still in a playoff spot and like the fans are still showing up and believing in this team, we've seen Chaim Bloom in the past do a hybrid buy-sell combo. So like, you can still sell your high value assets, but also bring in other pieces to support what remains that is more long-term driven.
If you're selling, though, Riley O'Brien, you're acknowledging this is not a team that's probably going on any kind of a run.
Perhaps.
It's going to be nearly impossible for you to be able to replace that at the back end of your pen.
You could have said the same thing. Now, Helsley was not the same player he was in 2025 that he was in 2024, but we saw them trade off Helsley, Maton, and Matz at the deadline last year, and that bullpen didn't skip a beat. And so
I think that was because they had pieces ready to go at the minor league level. This year, you don't. Like,
Perhaps
you just don't have those.
But the thing is, the point I'm trying to get to is like, I think that I trust this organization. They've shown me a track record over the last couple of years of being able to identify, undervalued relief talent and be able to like install them and they flourish in certain ways. Like I'm looking at George Soriano. We all looked at each other and was like, what the hell was that? You traded Granillo for George Soriano. The guy's your setup man now. After having an 8 ERA, obviously bullpen ERAs don't matter in the grand scheme of things, but obviously he had an 8 ERA and that's notable in certain respects last season. And so to take that and then get what you're getting out of Soriano so far with the potential and the stuff for him to perhaps, 2 months from down the road, he might be doing what Riley O'Brien is doing right now. I don't know. I can't say that that's a non-zero chance that that's happening. And then you can install him into that closer spot and continue to move forward. I don't know. Or does George Soriano, start to produce in that way and you flip him instead and you keep Riley O'Brien? There's so many different, I don't know what teams are going to value who and what, but at the same time, I also think that maybe it's part of me is not trusting that this team is going to hold up for the sake of through the 162. And so ultimately I'm still approaching this until I get to August 3rd. And, maybe at that point I'll have to shift off of that position. But until then, I'm still approaching moving forward as I intended to at the beginning of the season.
I think the 23 deadline can be instructive on a lot of this stuff. If you're going to trade JoJo, go for it. That's fine. I just don't think that people should be expecting this huge haul for JoJo Romero.
I agree.
I think that you're going to get prospects that maybe will contribute at the major league level. And odds are that he probably won't contribute long-term at the major league level. Certainly not a guy that's going to be a long-term starter for you. If you want to trade a guy like Lars Nootbaar coming off of, a month of maybe success at the major league level, you can. I don't think you need to, though. He's a guy that has another year of club control, and that might be the kind of move that you make in the offseason. If you want to trade Dustin May, you can. I don't know how much you're going to reasonably be able to get for him. I think the guy that this conversation really revolves around is Riley O'Brien, because that's the trade chip that gets paid in a prospect's capital sense at the deadline every year, because every team could take him. He's cheap, he's cost controlled, he's really freaking good, and you could get a haul for him in return. So that's ultimately where the big decisions are going to lie for the St. Louis Cardinals at the deadline. And if they're 10 games above 500, they're hanging in the playoff mix. For me, I don't think I'm making that move. That's the kind of thing that I would say, hey, you want to revisit this in November, December, January? I guess not January. November or December, we can have that conversation. But if you get into late July and you're still in it, and you legitimately have a chance, coming off of all of the stuff that we've been talking about, where this team is finally resonating with its fan base for the first time in 4 years, and you seem to have turned the page on the sour taste in a lot of people's mouths of what the John Mozeliak era had become, for you to just then immediately transition right into, yeah, it's been a fun year, but we're going to go ahead and sell our closer at the deadline when we've got 5 picks in the top 75 of this year's Major League Baseball draft. We just had an entire offseason where we sold off all of our guys for prospect currency, and we're going to be able to do the same thing in next year's draft, and we've got this offseason where we could still sell Pedro Bajes or Jimmy Crooks, and we could go to the market and sell on Lars Nootbaar. We could go back to the market and then sell on Riley O'Brien if we really wanted to. I just don't know if that's going to be necessary for them at this year's trade deadline unless they fall out of it. In which case, then it's easy to make the argument that they should be selling, and I don't think anybody else would argue against you. But that's the one scenario. I also don't think they're going to be big buyers, though. I can't envision a scenario where they're big buyers.
Correct.
And if they're in it, I would personally be advocating for them to probably stand pat or add on the margins.
Absolutely. One question I want to ask you that I don't think Jake wants me to ask you is about extending J.J. Weatherholt.
Oh, God, here we go.
Sorry. Which I believe you've expressed caution with, or at least being okay with not extending him. And Jake is like, we should extend him as soon as possible. Can you explain why it's okay to have caution for J.J. Weatherholt?
Yeah, I would not extend JJ Weatherholt personally. I don't think it is the smart business decision personally. I get why fans want to. If you want JJ Weatherholt to be here for the next decade, man, I'm not going to argue against you. It'd be a lot of fun. He's a good baseball player, and if they do it, I will understand why they're doing it. But to me, it would be more of a signal than it would be anything from a pure baseball and business tangible decision. I don't think there's a whole lot to stand on there. You already have him signed for 6 years. So if you're a Cardinals fan that wants JJ Weatherholt for a long time, I've got great news for you. You already have him there. And there's nothing that needs to change for you to just have him on what is basically like a 6-year, $40 million contract. Let's say that that's what you currently have him signed to. That's awesome. That's great. And guess what? If you want to revisit this conversation in 4 or 5 years, you can do exactly that. And there's almost no downside in it, other than you might pay a little bit more on the back end of that deal. But you're also probably paying a lot less on the front end of this deal than you would if you decided to extend him right now. He's almost 24 years old. You have him through basically his age 30 season locked up already. The reason why it is so much different than Connor Griffin or some of these other guys that are getting the long-term deals, they're getting to the major leagues at 19 years old. In order for their teams to have them under contract in their prime years, which is like age 26 to 29, they have to extend them. Otherwise, they will go to market and another team will benefit for those prime years. So I think there's a really significant difference in the situation for JJ Weatherholt than it is for Connor Griffin, just to use that example. And for me, I don't think there's a lot of incentive for the Cardinals to make that decision right now. Now, if you want to talk about a guy that they could talk about extending, that player is Jordan Walker.
I was going to ask you that.
I don't think we're there yet. I think you need to get to the end of the season to see what the entire work looked like for the 2026 campaign before I'm willing to go there. But he's the guy that is more likely, in my opinion, to be extended before the 27 campaign than JJ Weatherholt is.
And I'll add another argument to not extending JJ Weatherholt, and I don't know that Jake agrees with me on this one. Second basemen don't get paid in free agency for whatever reason. I don't feel like they've gotten, like, what was it? The last big deal was Robinson Cano or something like that.
Yeah, Ketel Marte got paid, but it wasn't crazy.
Yeah, Colton Wong went to free agency. He got nothing. And then granted, JJ is better than Colton Wong, or should be better than Colton Wong. But I don't know. If the trend continues where second basemen just get a lot less than you would think, I feel like truly there's not a lot of downside to waiting.
I guess Marcus Semien would probably be the answer, right? Because he was technically a shortstop, but he moved to second, and they knew he was moving to second the moment that he signed that deal. Because they also signed Seager that offseason.
That's a good one. I forgot about Semien. Yeah, no, like, I've softened on my position in terms of, like, it has to be, like, I don't know that I ever said it had to be done, but I was strongly in favor of it getting done. I also think that there's an element to it that's not being spoken of as one that you talked about, and that's the symbolism and the fan, like, buy-in to it. Like, you know, this guy's going to be around for the next 10 years. You're basically saying this is our expected next Red Jacket member to go into the Cardinals Hall of Fame. Like, he took the first at bat of, you know, the quote-unquote new era of Cardinals baseball and the symbolism behind that, locking that in, telling your 10-year-old, or in your case, your 2-year-old son, hey, we can go get a J.J. Weatherholt jersey because he's going to be around for the next, 8 to 10 years, and, like, I don't have to worry or think about that. And, like, when I think of myself personally, I only have one jersey in my collection, and it's Paul Goldschmidt. That's because one of the reasons because they locked him up for 6 additional years. I think it was 7 total, if I remember that correctly. 2019, no. 6 years total.
It was 5, but it was
5. It was 6 total. Okay, either way. But my point being is, like, I knew he was going to be around for a long time, and at the time he was my favorite first baseman in all of baseball. My favorite team just got my favorite first baseman, and then 2 years later they got my favorite third baseman. I didn't get an Arenado jersey. That aged poorly, and I'm glad I decided to, choose caution in that example. I still enjoyed the years of watching Nolan Arenado, and I'm happy that he's having success in Arizona, but glad I didn't go ahead and do that. And you brought up, Jordan Walker, and he's, same age as JJ, but he has 3 less years of control. Whenever he's set to get paid, would be in that 26, 27 age range whenever he's actually hitting his prime. And if we're not witnessing Jordan Walker's prime right now, and like what that could potentially be, my God, that's a fun thought for one, but also what is that going to cost? Will it benefit the Cardinals to get out ahead of it now and save themselves some money so that they could they are able to spread it around a little bit more? I know on opening day you guys had Bill DeWitt III on your show, and he talked about how the idea or the intention is to get back to that top 8 to 12 range in terms of payroll overall. And so like you're going to need more than one high profile paid player in order to get to that level. So like he would just be one in that, but I would think that the more you can save on other guys, and this lends itself to your argument of JJ Weatherholt, is the more you're able to kind of, I don't know about depreciate, but kind of, tamp down other guys' earnings, the more you're able to spread it around and get other needs in other players. And I'm certain that's one element of why you advocate in favor of just going year to year with him for now. And if it comes time to pay the guy and you're ready to do it, then do it that way.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm coming from, is like there's just not an urgent need to do this. And I understand it would be fun. I understand what it would signal for fans, what the symbolism would be in that. I get that. But like I would just argue to those fans, you already have him for 6 years. He is locked in. They have to do nothing. They do not have to do a thing. And the benefit to this for the team is if something were to go awry, which I'm not rooting for, but is always possible in Major League Baseball, if there are injuries, if there is a lack of production, whatever the case, if it does not work out with JJ Weatherholt in their current setup, they can just let him go. And it's no harm, no foul. They can walk their separate ways, right? Dylan Carlson, just as an example, like that kind of a situation where teams could just let him walk. If they were to sign him long-term right now and lock him into that salary, that's gone. And now suddenly, the thing that Cardinals fans hated, which was a guy in his 30s that wasn't producing and that had to be in the lineup every day because the contract plays, you are willingly signing up for that potentially to be the case once again with an aging JJ Weatherholt. Again, I'm not telling you that will happen. But I'm telling you that is a risk of signing this contract if they wanted to do that right now. And currently, they don't have any of that risk. And the benefit of signing that deal is just not that significant, other than signaling to fans, we're back and we're signing these guys long term. If you want to do something like that, the guy you do it with is Jordan Walker.
What about Mason Wynn, hypothetically?
Another one where I just don't think there's any real need to do that right now, because if he is a light-hitting, defense-first shortstop, he's not going to price himself out of your market. You're going to be able to sign him long-term if you want to go that direction. Like, the best possible contracts that he could look at is like what Dansby Swanson got with the Cubs. The Cardinals could have made that deal. They could have signed him to that contract if they wanted to do so. In fact, I think they were in the market for Dansby Swanson potentially when he signed that contract with the Cubs. So that would be my argument on him, is like, I love Mason Wynn. I think he's undervalued by some Cardinals fans. I just don't think you have to do it. And right now he's got a carrot in front of him to incentivize the best performance possible. I don't think that's inherently a bad thing.
Yeah, the argument for an extension would basically be you think his bat has got another step and you want to get in the ground floor before it happens. But who knows? The more he plays, the less it looks like there is another thing in his bat. So hopefully there is.
Well, Gabe, do you have any other questions for BK? We've already eclipsed an hour, so I just want to, be considerate of his time as well.
No, I got nothing else.
Awesome. BK, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure as always. We so much appreciate you actually, showing up. Just kidding. I'm not taking shots. You showed up. You decided to jump in even though, circumstances hadn't gone exactly as we anticipated, and so we appreciate you being flexible and still jumping in and talking with us. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for the time.
Of course, for anybody that's wondering, what is Jake talking about? I was late. I apologize. I messed up. My days got crossed, and my DMs did not come through. So I was a late arrival to the party, but I'm happy to be here. Happy to do it. Thank you guys so much.
He shared the promotional poster, so I knew he knew about it. He had confirmed the date. We had talked, and so everything was there. And then we got to today, and I sent him 3 or 4 different DMs. And no response whatsoever. So, you know what? It worked out. We're here. We had a great conversation. It was wonderful. And it was all for you guys, the listeners. So thank you for joining us for this episode of the Viva Alberto's podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a review on your favorite streaming platform. We will talk to you all next week when we are joined by the Pied Piper of Shirtless Cardinals Conversations, as Wednesdays with Walton and Reese co-host and prospect evaluator Kyle Reese joins the show. Have a great week, St. Louis, and go Cards!